Welcome, and thank you for taking the time to watch this important video about the survey of construction. Our survey started in 1959 and continues today thanks to your efforts. We want to start by giving you a little insight about what happens to the data that you collect, and to tell you more about the importance of the work that you do and how it serves our country. When listening to the national news or browsing the news online, you've probably seen or heard stories discussing either housing starts or new home sales. For example, here's a recent headline from CNBC that mentions the results of new housing starts collected for the month, and a story from U.S. News and World Report about sales of new homes that came out a week later. In addition to these, news outlets like Bloomberg, The Wall Street Journal, Reuters, and NASDAQ also discuss our monthly new housing data. All of these outlets and more within and outside of the United States describe and discuss our housing data consistently, housing data that you collect. In these excerpts, you may notice that they refer to the data as being reported by the Commerce Department as opposed to the Census Bureau. Make no mistake, the Census Bureau is responsible for the collection, review, and publication of these data. However, the Commerce Department releases our data to the public. You're probably curious, why is the data from the Survey of Construction, or SOC, so important that it deserves all of this attention? First, let's take a look at the data products that are created from SOC. The federal government has designated 13 census products as principal economic indicators, and 2 of these are from SOC. The first is new residential construction, often called the Housing Starts Report, and sometimes NRC for short. This is one of the 4 indicators that the government has classified as highly sensitive, meaning they are the most crucial to the economy. The other SOC indicator is new residential sales, which is frequently called new home sales, or NRS for short. We announce these numbers each month by issuing press releases that provide the data to the press and the nation. So what is our monthly schedule like, and how do we produce the press releases? First of all, our press release dates are set in advance, and we never miss a date, regardless of the situation. Even in blizzards, pandemics, or with major computer problems, we've always found a way to release the data on time. The process starts with you completing the listing and collecting data through the 8th workday. As these data are being transmitted to us, our staff are constantly reviewing all of the data, as well as responding to your notes. Additionally, we often send questions that we may have about the data you've collected. At the same time, we're also conducting a statistical review of the data. By the 9th workday, we complete any last-minute reviews and run programs to tabulate the numbers, create data tables, graphs, and write-ups about the data in preparation for the NRC press release around the 12th workday. We conduct another review, which is in the NRS release on or around the 17th workday. You may hear terms like revisions to the previously reported data. After the data are tabulated on the 9th workday, it is restricted to only a small number of people. So how do the reports get into the public domain? The first person outside of the census to see the numbers is a member of the President's Council of Economic Advisors. The afternoon before the release, we send an encrypted transmission to the President's Council of Economic Advisors. They prepare a summary for the President's morning briefing book for the next day. On release day, we use a special system that posts the data on the census website at exactly 8:30 a.m. and 0 milliseconds using the atomic clock. This ensures that everyone has access to the information at the same time. Our website gets thousands of hits from people accessing the information immediately upon its release. We also brief the Undersecretary of Commerce about the data on the morning of the release. Again, this all starts with the data that you have collected. At the Census Bureau's homepage, census.gov, there is a news box on the right side labeled U.S. Census Bureau Economic Indicators, where our data appears as soon as it's released. The detailed data on new residential construction can be found at census.gov/starts at 8:30 a.m. on the date of the release. Here's what that page looks like. And if you want to know when the next release will be, just click on the link labeled Release Dates on the bottom right of the page. Now that you are familiar with the process of getting the release to the public, let's dive in a bit further. The first thing you'll notice is that this is a joint release with the Department of Housing and Urban Development, because HUD provides part of the funding for our survey. More on that later. Table 1 is from the Building Permit Survey, which we will also cover. Tables 2 through 5 are all from SOC. These tables chronicle the formations of new residential housing projects from when the permit is issued to when the project is complete. Tables 3 through 5 include NP or non-permitted cases in addition to those from permitting areas. Take a look at Table 3 starts and Table 5 completions, which express how many cases were started and how many cases reached completion for the month. Now let's take a look at an example of the tables we produce for the NRC press release. In this case, we are going to take a closer look at Table 3A. These are the weighted units that were reported started during June 2020. This is only a piece of the data produced in the press release. The other 4 sections follow a similar format. While we report on weighted units and not the cases themselves, we tabulate the cases by HUs, or housing units. So it's paramount to know the correct HUs for all of your cases. The numbers that appear in the release are in thousands of housing units and are shown by the size of the structure. We show the data for the total U.S. and the 4 census regions: Region 1 Northeast, Region 2 Midwest, Region 3 South, and Region 4 West. This is the top half of the table, Table 3A, which shows the seasonally adjusted annual rates. We adjust the data for seasonal variations so that you can compare January to July without having to consider that there are fewer starts in the winter, as well as other seasonal influences of housing activity. The unadjusted data is available in a similar format below Table 3A. The data in Table 3A are shown as annual rates. That means that this table is saying that if the pace in June 2020 continued for the whole year, the annual number of starts would be 1,186,000. The record highest number of starts was 2,494,000 in January 1972, nearly 2 times the current level. That's when baby boomers were buying a lot of houses. The lowest ever was 478,000 in April 2009, at the height of the recession. The June 2020 rate was 4% lower than the June 2019 rate, according to the percent change rates in Table 3A. So we are 4% lower than last year at this time. There's a lot more to this table that we won't be going through in detail today. Now, let's look briefly at a sales report. The website for sales is census.gov/new home sales. Again, notice that the release schedule is on the right-hand side of the page. Looking at the NRS press release, notice that all data are for single-family houses where you entered 1 as the sale category. A response of 1 for sale category means that the house is for sale or already sold. The National Association of Realtors collects and publishes similar monthly data for existing home sales, which is different from the data SOC collects and publishes for new home sales. Let's look more closely at Table 1 of the NRS press release. Tables 2 and 3 look at the same data, but from different perspectives, with Table 2 separating the sales data by price ranges and Table 3 separating this data by what stage the unit is at in construction. For Table 1, data are shown by region, and most are shown seasonally adjusted on Table 1A. The data not shown, data replaced with X's on Table 1A, indicate that the data do not show a consistent seasonal pattern, and therefore are not seasonally adjusted. According to the press release seen here, the annual rate of houses sold in June 2020 was 776,000, which was 13.8% higher than the revised May number. The highest level ever for houses sold was 1,389,000 in July 2005, nearly double the current level displayed here. Next to the data for houses sold is the data for the monthly rate of houses for sale. Following a similar format to the sold data, the annual rate of homes for sale for June 2020 would be 307,000, which was a 1.3% decrease from the revised May number. Notice the column labeled Months Supply. That's the number of months it would take to sell all of the houses that are currently for sale if sales continue at the current level. The highest ever was a 12.2 month supply in January 2009. Now it is 4.7 months, which economists consider a healthy supply. You can see from this table why a case is considered partial if you have not determined the sales category or sale date. We also have data on prices, so that's why the interviewing instrument asks you to double-check unusually high or low sale prices. This data is displayed in Table 1B as a median and average sales price. We need to be absolutely sure of what we are publishing. New home sales is considered a leading indicator of the economy. That's why we ask you to find out when a sales contract was signed. It happens way before the sale goes to closing. We want to find out when people are buying houses as soon as possible. We have all of this information because of the data you are out in the field collecting every single month. So in the tables we just looked at, we saw housing units, start dates, sale dates, but nothing about all of the other data items that you collect in the instrument. Bedrooms, bathrooms, heating, fuel, you know the list. Why do we collect all of that? Well, in 1963, we started to collect housing characteristics as well. And on June 1st of every year, we release annual data on characteristics of new housing. We publish hundreds of tables with data by region for each of the individual single-family and multifamily characteristics. We also give data users a file with data from all of your individual single-family cases so they can make their own tabulations. A few of the most important characteristics, like square footage, are also published quarterly on the NRC webpage. We use the characteristics to calculate price indexes that measure how much of the change in house prices is due to houses being larger and fancier, and how much is due to inflation in prices. Here are some interesting tidbits that we learned from last year's collection of characteristics data. The average new single-family house completed in 2019 had 2,509 square feet. In 2009, the average was 2,438 square feet. 849,000 of the 903,000 houses completed had air conditioning. In the South, 46% of houses completed had 4 bedrooms or more, and in the West, 43% did. 4% of new single-family homes sold had a patio, porch, or deck. 13,000 multifamily buildings were completed. Of these, 35% had 1 to 2 floors, 42% had 3 floors, and 23% had 4 or more floors. So who uses all of this information we provide? HUD is our biggest data user, and as mentioned earlier, they provide part of our funding. They pay the Census Bureau to collect the data on sales, completions, and characteristics. HUD's mission is to support and strengthen the nation's housing, so they need an accurate and reliable measure of the state of the housing being built in the country. The data you collect are also used in the calculation of many important numbers and figures, including the gross domestic product, or GDP, which helps identify the health of our economy and whether we are in a recession. Government agencies, such as the Department of Veterans Affairs, uses our price indexes to adjust for inflation for home renovation benefits they pay to disabled veterans. Our data is important to the completion of their mission and serving their constituents. Outside of the realm of government, companies need our data in order to make crucial business decisions. For example, hardware and home improvement stores need to know how many houses are being built to determine how many products to order. There are even companies and organizations outside the United States that use this data. People also utilize our data in making important decisions throughout the various stages of their lives, such as a first-time home buyer looking to see whether there are new homes available and at what price, or a seller deciding if it's a good time to put their home on the market. I'm sure you can easily think of a time in your life where having the data provided by SOC would have helped in making an important housing decision. While our data has been crucial since the beginning of its collection, our data are especially important now. As you know, the housing bubble and the financial crisis had a profound effect on our economy. The inventory of foreclosed homes affected the number of new homes sold because buyers opted for cheaper foreclosures. And since the recession, builders have lent toward building more expensive homes rather than those for first-time buyers. There are more young people in the marketplace now, but many are reluctant to purchase homes after seeing home values decline in the recession. And many have student loan debt that makes it difficult to buy a house. These factors have resulted in new high demand for apartments. We talked earlier about our data being leading indicators, as they provide early signs of the beginning or end of a recession. Our data affects the whole economy because home purchases increase the demand for other household goods. If you buy a new home, you'll probably need furniture, curtain rods, a garbage can, and all sorts of other items for your home. So what have the data looked like recently? This is a graph of permits and housing starts over the last 20 years. The thick lines at the top are single-family data, and the thinner lines are multifamily data. The gray vertical bars indicate recessions. Multifamily construction has been slightly increasing since the 2008 recession, but recently multifamily construction has decreased since we have entered our latest recession. For single-family construction, however, you can see there was a huge drop in housing units started and permitted between 2006 and 2009. This was the steepest drop ever, and we have yet to recover up to pre-recession levels. Now, let's talk briefly about other ways we use SOC data, specifically the information from the listing. As mentioned previously, we also publish data on building permits through the Building Permits Survey. We typically send Form C-404 to about 9,000 permit offices every month to collect building permit data. Only about 10% of those permit offices are SOC offices. The information collected includes number of buildings, number of housing units, a housing unit being a house, an apartment, a group of rooms, or a single room intended for occupancy as separate living quarters, and valuation of construction. If we don't get a C-404 from an office that is a SOC office, we use your listing data instead. Your data are published as the report for that office. We would like to have both sources of data when that data are for two different surveys. These building permit data are important. They are used to calculate annual population estimates between the censuses that are the basis for the distribution of millions of dollars in federal funding to local areas. That's how we use your SOC listing. But what about the other SOC listings? As you know, SOC includes many other construction indicators. Construction spending is another of the 13 principal economic indicators that was mentioned earlier. It tracks the amount of money spent on all types of construction. Currently, over $1.3 trillion per year is spent on construction. The construction spending data are directly input into the GDP. The work of our field representatives is used for all of that data. For single-family homes, we can estimate how much builders are spending based on what you tell us about the houses for SOC, so your data is used to help calculate that part of the GDP. For multifamily projects, we need more details than we collect for SOC to determine construction spending. So we send C-700R forms to these respondents. The survey is called the Multifamily Construction Progress Reporting Survey. It collects monthly spending information needed for the GDP that is not collected for SOC. Have you ever had a multifamily respondent complain that he was also being contacted by someone else from the census? Well, that's us, and it is for construction spending and the GDP. Now, let's talk about another survey that's related to SOC. The Survey of Market Absorption, or SOMA, is also funded by HUD, and it measures the absorption rate, rent or sales price, and amenities of new apartments, condos, and cooperatives. As mentioned earlier, multifamily housing continues to be a key factor in today's economy. When a building with 5 housing units or more is completed for SOC, it is added to the SOMA sample, and the first SOMA interview is done 3 months later. You typically collect the data from building managers or rental or sales agents. Interviews are conducted every 3 months for a year or until all units are absorbed, whichever comes first. A unit is absorbed when it is rented or sold. The survey produces estimates at the national and regional levels. Absorption rates are not available for individual cities. Estimates of absorptions are released quarterly. Your role for SOC is different from your work on most of your other surveys in several ways. For your other surveys, you get a list of cases from headquarters that has been pre-sampled for you. For SOC, the instrument creates our sample from approximately 1,000 randomly sampled building permits. Remember, the work you do affects other surveys' sample of cases too. Your role on SOC is equally important when it comes to your NP canvassing. Non-permitted canvassing creates the sample of new buildings for your assignment. If you don't list it, we may never know about a building. That's a big responsibility you're entrusted with. Another difference from other surveys is that the SOC sample is small. Every one of your cases has a big impact on the gross domestic product. Late reported data causes a significant increase in our non-sampling error and larger revisions for the economic indicators. Housing plays a major role in the growth of the United States economy, contributing to the GDP through residential construction and services provided by existing houses. So that's why we need you to give each and every listing and every case your best effort necessary to get good quality data. Also, you interact with your local government when you visit the permit office. You're probably one of the few Census Bureau employees that your local officials see. Your presence and the professional way you conduct your business reflects well on the Census Bureau and encourages the permit office staff to complete their C-404 report for the building permit survey. The biggest difference between SOC and other surveys is that you decide on the best respondent for each case. The builder, the owner, a site visit, or the permit office, you are empowered and trusted to select the best way to get the necessary data. Your role on SOC is particularly unique. We consider you to be our expert on new construction in the areas where you work. Many of the other economic indicators, like retail sales, have traditionally collected data by mail or online. They're having more and more trouble getting businesses to respond even if they contact them by phone. We are very lucky not to have that problem because we have you to keep our response rates high. Thank you again for your hard work, dedication, and for the quality of data that you collect for us and for our country.